It has not really been a good summer for gun control. In fact, some would say in late June, the Department of Justice settled a case with Cody Wilson, allowing schematics for gun parts to be downloaded for use with 3D printers. And this was done on the basis that digital material fell under First Amendment protections. The case underscored a 1995 ruling that established computer code as speech. But to put the matter more succinctly, it established that code is free speech.
Can't stop the signal now.
Now, it's generated some reaction, overreaction, I tend to think personally, but I'll get into that in a minute. Let's move on. About a week or two later, the Ninth Circuit upheld efforts to try to block a ban against certain magazines in California, citing that these magazines fell under Second Amendment protections. What's more, the court inferred that these protections stand despite popular sentiment towards or against these said magazines. Ninth Circuit in California. And speaking of the Ninth Circuit, later in July, it ruled in Young versus Hawaii that open carry was constitutionally protected. Did you get that? That was two pro 2A rulings from the Ninth Circuit in two of the most gun-unfriendly states in the Union. In case this is a sign of the apocalypse, I'm looking to see if the sun's turned to sackcloth or something like that. Getting back to the Department of Justice's settlement with Cody Wilson, it inflamed all sorts of panic from the usual gun control suspects. The sky is falling and it's made of milled plastic! This is a very odd response because there's still a camp of hoplophobic thought that maintains that the Second Amendment is still only applicable to single-shot weapons, and now they're losing their minds over single-shot weapons. And it seems that economic illiteracy is still a prerequisite for gun control advocacy, because a 3D printer, even some of the newer ones and even some of the cheaper ones, with materials to produce something, with a computer to drive the printer, will still cost you something in the same neighborhood of a few new guns. And that's not a very cost-effective approach to committing crime with guns, because either you're paying way too much for so little gain, or you're investing way too much in the capability of making inferior guns that you could have bought for the same amount of money. But since emotion tends to take precedence over reason in gun control policy, its advocates are frantically trying to block access to these 3D printing schematics. However, even judges that are sympathetic to these gun control advocates say that they cannot ignore the First Amendment issues involved here. Still, other judges are a lot more clear on the matter, as was recently demonstrated by a federal judge in Texas who defeated the efforts of certain gun control groups to try to block access to these 3D schematics. These players were the Brady Campaign, Everytown, and the Gifford Center. Gave them a backhand from the bench.
What?
And as a final note, and this involves a detail that has gone largely unreported, if not just plain unnoticed, by the hoplophobic press, is that settlement between Cody Wilson and the Department of Justice declared that rifles, like the AR-15, are not weapons of war. And so we have just witnessed the death of another hoplophobe talking point. And the summer's not done yet.